The Paris Apartment. I read it. I want to talk about it. And I want to talk spoilers. So if spoilers don't bother you, stick around and listen to my thoughts and then tell me what you thought of Paris Apartment.
Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soft spoken.
Hi guys, this is Jane, and I recently finished The Paris Apartment, and that was a lot to take in. I did read it as an audiobook, and I think that is a great way to consume it. It is an ensemble cast, and I loved with the ensemble cast that it was like very good people doing it. I really liked the actors they had doing it for the most part. I thought Mimi was really great. I thought Jess was really great. I thought Nick was really great. The mom, whose name I can't remember, she was a little more so-so, but I didn't have a huge issue with anybody who was cast. So I really enjoyed the ensemble cast of that. And I think this book might be hard to follow for me because it has such a large cast if I reading it versus hearing it, because everybody sounded different and that really helped me. So I loved the premise of this book. I was so excited when she gets there and there's these subtle clues that, her brother is gone and, he probably faced some peril because, the cat with the blood and the necklace and all the stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was really initially invested. And then I felt like it was a lot of let's just meet everybody and hear their background stories. And I kind of got bored for a while. I really didn't like the other characters. And again, I don't know that you're supposed to because they're the suspects. They're not great people and they have secrets, and I definitely had some issues connecting to everybody but Jess. And I mean, Jess is obviously an imperfect character, but I at least liked her and wanted to root for her. I especially felt frustrated with Nick because Nick was just not as invested in helping as I wanted him to be. And obviously at the end, we know a little bit more about why. So you have all of this stuff going on and it takes forever to get to the reveals. And it's just investigating, and you find out that everybody who is the brother's neighbor, I want to say his name is Ben, the brother, Jess's brother, Ben, and they have a really cool backstory, I should add. So they are half siblings who ended up in foster care, and then he got adopted into a really well-off family, and she remained a foster kid. So they end up coming from very different backgrounds and having kind of a complex relationship, which is one of the reasons that when she's like, oh, he's missing, it's harder to get the police involved, it's harder to get assistance. It's just there's a whole cycle of people going, well, maybe he didn't want to talk to you type thing, which is pretty awful. It is what it is. So we have her, with the apartment, trying to find out what happened. Where's her brother? Who might know? And we meet the different people in the apartment, and they quickly all become suspects. We have Nick, who was Ben's best friend, and then they were out partying one night and ended up sharing a kiss, and Nick is not really ready to deal with his sexuality yet. So he is afraid that Ben is going to tell his dad or make a big deal out of it. But also when Ben wants to come stay at Nick's house, Nick is like, we're friends, sure, let's do that. But then it doesn't seem like they've picked up their relationship at all either. So I didn't really necessarily always understand their dynamic. I understood what happened in the past, but their current dynamic and why Nick was like, hey, come live here. I mean, it was explained, but I didn't necessarily 100% buy that. So then we have Mimi, who is Nick's, we learn, adopted sister. So she gets a crush on Ben pretty quickly and is kind of in love with him. Like from the get-go, she's kind of in love with him. And so we have a lot of this very childish fantasizing about him. And then at the end, like, that's important because she has actually saved his life from the killer, who is her dad, her adopted dad, who has never really loved her. Like, he her dad, and this is important to the story too, he is running a brothel. He tells people he's in the wine business and he's selling wine to rich people, but he's actually running a brothel. And Mimi's biological mother was one of the women working in the brothel who gave birth in the brothel and died. And so his wife had always wanted a child, wasn't able to conceive, and he was just like, "Here, stop bothering me. Here's a baby. Don't ask too many questions." And she was like, "All right, I'll take the baby and not gonna ask too many questions." So the mother character, she she was working at the dad's brothel, and then she ended up I don't know if he fell in love with her, but he liked her enough to marry her, and she was like, "Okay, great. Don't have to be a whore anymore. I get to be a wife. This is going to be better." And it is better, but it's problematic because, he is very controlling. He's kind of a dick to her, and at the end of the day, she doesn't have a lot of power or resources of her own. She feels kind of like she's just a pretty decoration on the shelf. And she ends up having an affair. I don't know if you call it an affair, but a thing, a physical thing with Ben. And so you've got all these different layers of family dynamics and family stories of their connection to Ben, their connections to each other, this whole complicated family business. There's another brother, I want to say his name's Archie, but I won't swear to you. And he doesn't have a POV, which is probably why I don't remember his name. He is married, but his wife doesn't like him very much right now. And he's worried that she's going to leave him, and he's got all this going on, and also like his dad wants him to take over the family business, but Archie is kind of a jerk. So it's a whole family dynamic, and it almost was too much. So we have each person's personal story, and then how they're connected to Ben, how they're connected to the family. And for me, it was just like a little bit too much information. It was cool that there was that much character development, but I didn't want that much character development when I just want to find out what's happening to Ben. I feel like I'm sitting here going, okay, it's cool. All this stuff is happening and it's kind of related to what happens to Ben, but I just want to find Ben. And I care a lot less about like that Mimi found out her mom was sleeping with Ben, and so Mimi was upset, and even though that makes her a suspect and all this stuff. At the end of the day, Ben is not dead. He is being held captive by the mom. And captive is not quite the word. The mom and daughter have been like trying to nurse him back to health. And or maybe it's just the mom. I can't remember. I think the daughter was involved too, but I'm not. No, the daughter might not have been involved. The mom's trying. She's got him in the attic and is trying to nurse him back to health. And I didn't love that. I thought that was weird. At first, we don't really know what's going on, and the reveal of him like still being alive, I was like, this is kind of dumb. And then when we find out what really happened, I'm like, okay, it's less dumb, but I don't love it. So we learn that what has happened is Mimi was with, no, Mimi was spying on Ben. And her adopted father, I think, shows up and wants to kill Ben because Ben has figured out his secret that he's running a brothel instead of selling wine. Well, Mimi, of course, is still in love with Ben despite the fact that he slept with her mom. And she ends up killing her dad. And then she passes out, or I don't know. She doesn't know what's happening. And the mom jumps in and she's like, okay, we got to fix this. Nobody can know, because the mom, and I have to give her props for this. Mimi may be her adopted daughter, but that is her daughter, no questions asked. Like that, I loved that relationship. I loved her maternal need to protect this child so much. Like, it was beautiful. Her relationship with Mimi, even though it was complicated and, she slept with Mimi's crush, and I don't think she knew it was Mimi's crush, but anyway. So the mom is like, okay, we got to protect my kid. So she took Ben, who has been hurt by the altercation with the father, and she has tried to nurse him back to health while not going to the authorities, which I thought was kind of strange. It seems like a bad plan. And at the end, Jess is all like, well, I'll just tell him he was in a motorcycle accident or a moped accident or whatever. It was something he drives, something bike-like. I'll just tell him he was in an accident and we found him and now we brought him to the hospital. But I feel like it's hard with the book to figure out the time frame because everything seems to take so long and there's so much going on. So I felt like that was kind of a long time between like laying there being sick and injured and going to the ER and just showing up and be like, yes, this person has been sick for many, many days and we just found them, but they didn't die. And, they didn't dehydrate, they didn't anything, but here we are. Like, Anyway, suspend your disbelief here. So the mom doesn't want anybody to find out that Mimi killed her dad, her adopted dad. So she basically has wrapped up the father in Ben's apartment and, gotten Ben hidden away and is telling her stepsons, that, hey, we need to, this thing happened, there was an accident, we need to take away the body. So the boys think they are carrying Ben out, but it is actually their dad who they are taking out and like burying in the yard. There's also a housekeeper who's related to all this, but only in the vaguest of ways. Mimi is her biological granddaughter. And she's mostly like a crazy old woman who's giving people warnings of, don't be here, don't investigate this, you don't need to know. And it's like, okay, but number one, which I thought it was weird, okay? It's like the person who has the most to lose and who tried to kill Ben is already dead. So why are you worried about her finding out that her brother is alive and needs medical attention? The ending didn't quite work for me. I liked Jess as a character. I didn't really care about the other characters. I did like the bond between Mimi and her adopted mother, though. And it was such a weird, it was kind of a weird book. Like, I didn't hate it. I did give it a 3, and I didn't think it was a bad book. But there was a lot of stuff at the end where I felt like I really had to suspend my disbelief, and I don't enjoy that. Like, I want to just love it, and I want to feel like everything is awesome, and I would never have guessed any of that stuff. I didn't think there was enough evidence to get me to the mystery and finding out what happened to Ben. So I didn't want to say it's unfair, but I definitely think we're not told everything we should, and we are getting people's POV, so we have some unreliable narrator stuff in there too. So it was an interesting book. My friend recommended it to me. She really loved it. I liked it. Not sad I read it, but like I wouldn't read it again. And when people ask for Rex in the future, it won't be one that I necessarily think of unless there's something really specific they're wanting that was in that book. But if somebody's like, hey, can you recommend a mystery or thriller? That wouldn't be one of the top 5 that pop into my head of going, oh, this is great. So it was fine. Have you read it? Did you like it? Did you feel differently about it? I also, as I said, was reading it as an audiobook, so did I get anything wrong? Because, with reading an audiobook, it's easier sometimes, I think, to miss plot points or miss things within the story that can make it really different. Now, I love audiobooks because I don't always have time to iRead, and also because it's just so fun, especially in this case, to hear all the voices and the actors and stuff. So I loved it, but did I miss something as I'm explaining what happened that you would like to add in the comments below? We've already labeled this a spoiler review, so your comments can be spoilery. It's fine. All right, guys, this has been Jane. I will see you next time. Bye.